Hello lads, ladies, gents, ladetts, whoever, whatever, welcome back to another video. Today we're diving into a game that tackles some pretty heavy subject matters. So with that said, if you are someone who struggles to deal with stories based around cancer and mental health, I don't blame you for giving this one a miss. And before I continue, I also want to say thank you to Keymailer and Inkforge Studios for allowing me to have a copy of today's game, I'll Be Brave Tomorrow, for this review. I also want to give a big shout out to Inkforge Studios for partnering up with a great Ormond Street Hospital charity for this game. More on that at the end of this video, so do please watch. So with that out of the way, how would I best describe I'll Be Brave Tomorrow? A truly memorable experience. Upon starting the game, we find ourselves playing as a kid named Robin, waking up in hospital after collapsing at school, setting everything into motion. At first, you hope it's a temporary thing. Maybe it's nothing too serious. However, it doesn't take long to find out that things are definitely way more serious than we initially thought. It becomes a game covering the journey of Robin and their battle, though not how you might expect. Instead of playing for sympathy points and showing the worst possible moments, the game tackles the in-between. The fear of not knowing, the guilt of worrying about those who are worried about you, loneliness, and some of the difficulties of trying to remain optimistic in such an awful situation. This is done through several different gameplay mechanics throughout the game. The core journey though is shown through two main modes. Firstly, 3D sections where we play as Robin directly, and the 2D sections where we play as a Robin. So it's not exactly going to win the most incredible symbolism award out the gate, but more on the symbolism soon. Because although there is the very obvious one-to-one comparison between the two playable characters, the 2D game has a lot more subtle symbolism throughout. The 2D section itself, however, is just a traditional platformer that, as you progress, gradually unlocks more abilities, such as double jump and glide. It's far from what I would say is difficult, but that's not the point. It's the story that's contained within itself, seeing the Robin attempting to find their father, who is seemingly missing. This is where the symbolism to me starts to really elevate, as throughout the 3D sections we never see Robin's father directly, only hearing about them and the things that they are going through and doing for them. At least in my interpretation, it shows this longing for the form of comfort and protection a child would expect from their parents. And the game isn't implying that the father isn't doing this. If anything, it's implying the father is doing this while trying to make ends meet at the same time. This is further driven home by the in-game picture book, The Cub Who Did Not Hibernate, following a young cub that was scared of never waking up again. This drives home the fear of the unknown, and in the case of the child who is sick, the fear of dying. Throughout the picture book, there is a line spoken, "What if I never wake up again?" And my lord, is it a kick in the guts. Because although I'm sure we're all aware of the horrible reality that there are children that are stuck going through such an awful experience, not thinking about it and being able to plead ignorance makes it a lot more palatable for those who aren't affected. I consider myself to be extremely lucky to have never had to deal with such an awful thing. And even though I've had cancer hit my family, I've never had it happen to anyone who was a child. That's just another level of awful in my book. Continuing on, the 3D sections of the game are a lot more like a point-and-click adventure, typically seeing you look around trying to figure out what Robin is actually feeling, along with also finding out what's going on in the world around them. Several times throughout you'll notice seemingly large jumps in time, and they are typically noted, but one thing that got to me was seeing the names of their friends written upon the whiteboard eventually fade. It shows how isolated that Robin has started to become. However, in who might just be the greatest NPC character of all time, even though we never see them, Nurse Bella becomes Robin's friend, helping them not feel as alone as they once might. You can tell, however, how much loneliness is getting to Robin as they start to talk to their stuffed animals, allowing their imagination to take over as they try to keep their spirits up. This use of imagination really starts to open the gameplay up, as we are introduced to several different minigames, which are used as a way for Robin to continue to pass time. We have RC car racing, paper plane throwing, and a jetpack jumping minigame that, with the exception of the paper planes, we do multiple times throughout, with the racing minigame being the most common. Though they are simple and nothing I would write home about mechanically, they are functional and serve their role of serving as a simple distraction for Robin. Now I could go into the ever-changing decor of the hospital room that Robin is stuck in, but to be honest, you're better playing the game for yourself. It's an incredibly touching story. It's not overly complex, it just follows the journey of Robin, who thankfully manages to beat cancer. If they had the story end with Robin not surviving, I don't think I would ever recover, and I would absolutely detest everyone at Inkforge Studios. However, I will say I am mad at them for developing only the third game that has ever made me cry, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. Beyond the story and gameplay mechanics, the game's presentation is practically second to none, as it is extremely polished. The 3D sections aren't hyper-realistic or anything, and we never see a person actually rendered out at any point, but the world feels real. The colours seem true to life, at least at the beginning, only as time goes on to see things slowly fade a little bit as we move into winter, possibly reflecting the optimism that Robin had of once going home. The 2D sections are where you can could argue the game shines the most graphically, with wonderful pixel art and animations. But where the game shines most to me is its soundtrack. At first, it wasn't really grabbing me as much as it did by the end of my experience. Functionally far from the most complex music I've ever heard, but it does its job to perfection of enhancing what you're seeing on the screen. It never tries to be overly sappy or overly happy. It nails what it is going for. You will also notice that there is no traditional voice acting throughout the game, and I honestly think that's for the best, because I don't think there would have been a way to get someone to voice act for this and direct while covering a subject as heavy as this without it coming off almost insulting. So with all this said, I had to reach out to the developers and ask what inspired I'll Be Brave Tomorrow, to which Thomas Hunt, the creative director, let me know it was inspired by his own experiences as a child dealing with hospitals, playing an old GameCube in waiting rooms between appointments, and he wanted to make a game that highlighted how amazing games can be for children in need of an escape, in which I say the teams nailed it. I also asked if there were any future plans for I'll Be Brave Tomorrow, to which they let me know they're currently in the process of releasing the in-game storybook as an actual physical release, so keep your eyes peeled on Amazon. Finally, I also had to ask if they had any other projects in the work, and they have a game called Fireside Fables, which is also partnering up with Gosh, also known as the Great Ormond Street Hospital charity, which will see a group of children sitting around a campfire sharing stories, while your character's childhood plushie plays out those stories, which if it's half as good as I'll Be Brave Tomorrow, sounds like it's going to be an incredible game. I'll Be Brave Tomorrow could have been simply nothing more than a play for sympathy, and it still would have got good reviews, because who the hell is going to talk badly about a game where the child has cancer? But they didn't do that. They made a game that tackled the struggles that we don't always think about. The fears, the emotional pain, the frustrations, and the loneliness. And although I would have liked to have seen more with how the parents were doing in all of this, I think the more subtly implied things like the dad spending money they didn't necessarily have to get Robin a Super Nintendo shows enough. And if this isn't enough, Ink Forward Studios has pledged to donate half of their revenue to the Great Ormond Street Hospital charity, in which I'll have that link down below if you feel so inclined to check it out. And even if this charity isn't necessarily for you, please do look into your local hospitals and see if they could use any help. I've played many games that will stick with me, such as Final Fantasy VIII, Kingdom Hearts, The Darkness, and many others. But I don't think there will ever be a game that has moved me quite the way I'll Be Brave Tomorrow has. As I said at the top of this video, if you're someone who struggles with this type of subject matter, maybe for your own mental health, give this game a miss. But if you are someone who loves emotional and well-delivered narrative-based gameplay, there are very few, if any, that can top the experience that this game delivers. So with that, lads, ladies, gents, ladetts, whoever, whatever, it brings us to the end of another video. I hope you enjoyed this look at I'll Be Brave Tomorrow, and I do sincerely hope you check out this game. At the very least, I do hope you check out Gosh, or just any local charity that you feel inclined to give to, if possible. It's been a truly remarkable experience that I'll never forget. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that like button. If you want to go that extra step, you can hit the subscribe button, and if you want to go that extra mile, you can support me on Ko-fi, YouTube memberships, or Patreon, like these lovely people here. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe out there. Bye.